Hey world. So it's Mike Paterano and I have Jen Zahari here with me. And I met Jen maybe 10 days ago. um,
Yeah.
and after the first conversation, I said, "You're going to go live with me." And I didn't give her much of a choice. Poor Jen. And now she's live for the first time ever. And we are just going to have a conversation and share some stories and how we overcame some things. And just try to show others how they can follow in our footsteps. So, Jen, why
Right.
don't you give everybody a little bit of a background on you?
Background as in here and now, or background as in where it all started, or both?
Where it all started is a good place.
Where it all started. Okay, so to really get who I am, I think it's important to know um, where it all started before the story started, right? And for me, as a young girl growing up, I was the gregarious one. I was the one who wanted to talk to everyone and be a part of everyone's world. If I was in the room, I wanted to make everyone smile. And it was it was me. It just felt good. It felt natural. And I've tried pinpointing it. It was between somewhere 5 to 8 or 9 range. I had someone very that I really looked up to. You guys, the mentors that we have in life, the ones that we just look up to that we're just in awe of, especially as kids. And for me, and I'm an accountable person, it's all on my story and what I built. But for me, that was this person. And I idolized this person and I wanted to be everything that they wanted me to be. And unfortunately, it came with some very harsh words. I took words, and I don't even like saying them out loud anymore, but I took words like, nobody wants to hear what you say, Jen. You're not important. You're just dumb. Just shut up. And those words just ring so loud, especially when you're little. So I started, and that was my starting point of when I went into the proverbial box and started second guessing again at 5 to 8 years old, when you're this young, gregarious, ready to rule the world girl. And the inside started questioning, do they not want to hear what you have to say, Jen? And, um, I built on that story. When we're little, no one tells us how to build stories. No one tells us, okay, here's what this person says, but that doesn't mean you have to own it. And that doesn't mean you have to keep it.
So,
Um, yeah.
so I've shared with you a little bit of my story, and I know I've told the world a lot of my story, right? Because I don't really hide
Yeah.
anything, just kind of put it all out there. Um, if I ever want political ambitions, then I'm a great candidate because I have no skeletons. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm a little blunt and harsh, so that might hurt. But at the end of the day, I went through similar experiences, right? Like I was pushed down a little bit and put into a box a little bit. My mother was a little bit had some issues and some anger issues, and I she had a very sharp tongue, as used to say, and it was generational. So it was very harsh. Like words that came out were really harsh,
Yep.
and it was vicious. Like it cut through me as a child, and I still remember those words today.
Yep.
And it was painful. I mean, there were things like I was adopted at birth. I wish we could return you, but your biological family didn't want you either. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, right? Like my therapist killed himself when I think I was 9 or 10, and she looked at me one day in anger and said, "It's all my fault."
Mm.
Um, I mean, like things like that stick with you, right?
And they
Hi,
do.
hi, Mary Ellen. Hi, Laura Cobb. Hi, Mary Ellen Shea. Hey, Christy, Anna Roos, Bill Bradford, Emily. I'm just gonna get all the highs out of the way because I'm
Let's say
so
hi, everyone. It's great to
hi
see you
everyone.
tonight.
So bad with
Yeah,
comments. Words hurt, right? And when
they
you're at
do.
the age like what you went through, also, it's one of those things where they don't only hurt. That's where all the Barbies were. I said, okay, I'm into the room. Um, she's walking around with a little suitcase of Barbies.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
and so like they stick with you though, and they create this foundation of fear of being yourself and fear of everything at some point.
They
Right.
do.
And at some point for me, I acted out, right? Like that was my way to get even, or just, I always felt like I always received negative attention, even though my parents did show love and tried to love me and all those things. I just didn't allow myself to feel loved, right?
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of similarities for us. So continue, because now I'm going to get back to more comments. So definitely continue so I can
I
focus
agree.
on hitting buttons.
Well, and I think that you hit so many good points, Mike. So continuing on, I allowed that story to continue, right? We have I think it's the RAS in our brain. And my little brain said, okay, your voice isn't important. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And at that young age, with not the structure of how to build it, I started building the story, and I started watching, okay, what am I going to say? And started second guessing myself. Again, the interesting dichotomy for me, strong and outgoing while you're second guessing yourself, that was my start of anxiety. And I didn't realize it till I got older, of course. What I also didn't realize until I got older is that's also when food became a crutch for me in a very big way. Because up until then, I was a healthy young girl. And over the next 15 years, I got very obese, in addition to strong outside, internally just anxious, second guessing side. I think it was mid 20s, and I took hold of the weight piece, dropped 160 pounds, and I'm still proud of that. I've kept the bulk of it off. The thing of it is, and again, here comes back to the long-term pieces, I didn't change what was up here. Up in my head, I still looked in the mirror and saw this, and I hate saying this, but I saw this fat girl for so long. And again, it's our opportunity with people to teach them, when you're changing your state, you have to also change your mind, I think. And I think it's where we have the biggest opportunity as humans and as people to empower other people of how to change what's up here. So keeping on, again, continuing to build. My breaking point was my mid 30s. I had cancer, and my cancer hit in my throat, and thyroid cancer. And I didn't really realize it then how powerful it was. But that's your voice. And I always had that dichotomy of strong outside, but inside questioning. And I really believe that that's why it showed up where it did, in my body. And really, Mike, from there, it's been a whirlwind the last 8 years. You were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, it's ironic, right? Like, I'm an extremely spiritual person. Anybody who knows
Yeah.
me knows, right? Like, that's probably an understatement. And I believe that the spirit, your essence, your soul, whatever you want to call it, whenever you suppress it, it comes out through physical manifestations.
Mhm.
Me, it was my my type 2 diabetes got out of control. Now I'm off almost 60% of my meds. My thyroid went way out of whack, like completely, basically shut down overnight.
Wow.
Um, it's still swollen, but I don't have insurance where I'm at because I'm in the middle of nowhere, so I can't get it, whatever, scanned, whatever. But I do believe that, when you start healing your mind and you start healing your soul and you start healing those parts of you, that it starts healing your physical presence. And like you said, right, it's that emotional work. I've talked about this many times. I mean, I was sober for 14 years before I did the emotional work.
Right.
Like, I have a connection with a higher power that saved my life so many times it's not even funny. And that's the only reason I'm sober, because I didn't do the emotional work. I didn't get rid of the baggage. I didn't get that free and clear sober feeling. I never received it. Right. So for me, it was 14 years later and 7, 8 months ago that I started finally feeling that feeling. And, it was August or September is when I finally, for the first time in my life, said, I love myself. Right.
Yeah.
It, it's, it's crazy how this ultimate paradigm shift just starts switching everything in your body. Right.
Hmm.
And your story is so powerful because you've gone through these different transitions, and still you had that emotional work that you needed to do also.
Mm-hmm.
So your perception of your physical presence and your perception of how you perceived yourself started changing, then you needed to start doing the emotional work.
Right.
So what were the steps for the emotional work, and when did that kick? Was that before the cancer? Was that during the cancer? Was that
Yeah.
right after?
Really good question. My once I had thyroid cancer, that probably the next year was the probably I would define as probably the hardest year of my life. You know, all these emotions coming in, my anxiety just skyrocketed. I, for probably the first time, and I would have told you I would have never, I started having suicidal thoughts. And I would have told you that I was a person who would have never had those kind of thoughts. I was, and on the one hand, it was a great, you know, on the surface, I had just gotten a big promotion at work. Things are going great, building a good family. Outside, everything looked good, and internally, no one would have known. Again, I'm a proponent for this. We have an opportunity to do a better job, even in our employment workplaces, to see the signs. There are signs that people show when they're struggling, and we have a chance to see those.
Well,
But
and real quick, not to I'm going
yeah,
to
you're
cut you,
good.
not
It's
to cut
good.
you.
You're good.
I want to piggyback on this real quick because a lot of
Mhm,
people don't understand the thyroid,
mhm.
right? And how it shows with me at first is I go into a complete depression. That is and I'm exhausted. Like I have no energy whatsoever. Like
Yeah.
my body just seems to run out of energy. All I want to do is sleep, and I am so depressed,
Yep.
like morbidly depressed. And that's how it presented for me.
Mhm.
So as people have gone through 2020, I think that's something that they need to be aware of if they don't start coming out of this slump. Life isn't going to change drastically because the day changed, the year changed.
Right.
But if you're not able to come out of this funk, then you need to look into your thyroid because it's so important.
You
That
know,
little thing
yeah.
just drives people nuts on every hormone level. It's nuts.
It's really true. I mean, there are days, no thyroid, being a woman, extra hormonal anyway, there are days that I can wake up and be so drained, I can feel like I haven't slept at all. And thankfully, I have an amazing support system of a doctor who helps keep my energy level in check. Um, but there are days that there's just maybe something I ate threw it off, or you know, we all have tense times, especially right now, like you said, in 2020, and stress can get the better of us. And when it does, you're right, your thyroid can hit hard. So, but certainly the right, for me anyway, having the right exercise regimen and the right food regimen, knowing and just finally listening to my body. And when I wake up in the morning saying, Jen, don't run today because it will completely drain you, go for a walk instead. And just learning how to just be in tune to what your body tells you to do is a gift. You know, our bodies are going to tell us what they need if we just listen.
So I want you to continue with the story of when you started doing the emotional work. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I
You're
just
okay.
want to hit on the thyroid because not many people talk about it.
Of course.
And I don't think many men have those issues. So I wanted to share that I have it
Hmm.
because my doctor didn't even want to check my thyroid because I was a male, right?
Right.
So I forced it because my daughter has Hashimoto's. So I wanted to see, right? I was adopted, so I don't know my heritage. So at the
Yeah.
time. But go ahead, and then I'm going to catch up on comments because there's a ton of them.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So yeah, I, going down, my son, I think Bo he must have been 13, 14 time frame. And here's me as a mom having suicidal thoughts. That was my pivotal. There's no way I would leave my son. It's not an option. And that was where I started lifting. Um, it was messy. It looked more like a roller coaster than it did a clean line. Um, for me, the first and foremost thing that I had to do is I had to get self acceptance. You know, I went literally for years internally not accepting myself And I had to do that work first.
So for me, when it came to that, I want to finish what I'm saying now and then go back to this question because I think the dietary changes is huge.
Yep.
Like fish is a trigger for thyroid. There's many different things that affect thyroid.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as the emotional work, right? Like when I got to that point, for me, it was fun, having Annie show me Brene Brown,
Yeah.
right? Because I was carrying around this trauma from childhood and I never realized how many triggers I had, and two, how much crap I was carrying and holding against myself as a 41-year-old adult that happened to me when I was 5, 6, 7.
Yep.
And it was just so painful.
Yeah.
Like that's where I had to start. And that was just my step, right? That was my first step towards self-acceptance, right? And I'm still working on that one. I'm not perfect at it yet. I'm not 100% there. There's
Yeah.
days I still question it, right? But for the most part, I'm pretty pleased with myself. And I do love myself today. So it's a good step.
Yeah.
I do trust myself and I lean into my intuition. And, it's very rarely wrong. Um, but as far as dietary changes, for me, there was two big things. It was eating a lot less because I did eat a lot less. I wasn't as hungry when my thyroid started, when the hormones started getting regulated. I mean, yours was removed, so it's a little different.
Hmm.
And then also not eating gluten, like cutting gluten out really helped me in a major way too. What about
Yeah.
diet changes for you?
Yeah. This was something to navigate and get used to. Um, I even have triggers like almonds. Almonds can trigger me at times. Fish doesn't trigger me, ironically enough. Um, Super carby foods can sometimes trigger me. Breads, definitely, gluten does. And again, that's one that I didn't catch when I first the first couple of years after thyroid cancer. I was still doing no carbs and no sugar, no refined sugars anyway. So I didn't necessarily notice the food triggers right away at first. But biggest ones for me have been nuts, gluten, sugars, of course, any refined sugars. I tend to, as much as possible, try to stay towards healthy proteins, fruits, vegetables for the most.
I my diet isn't as great as it was before I came out here. um Being out here, I feel like my options are a little bit limited, so I just eat less, right? Everything that I do is eating less. Finding gluten-free bread out here is not easy, so I just eat wheat bread and less bread. Um, it's regulating, my sugar intake, which also obviously helps my type 2 diabetes, and
Yeah.
just regulating what my input, right? And I try to balance it out as much as possible. But it's still difficult, and I try to eat that 4 meals a day. Now, sometimes 4 meals a day is, 4 regular human meals. And then sometimes it's what a person should do eating 4 times a day. But that depends on the day and where I'm at and where I'm running around and, going from there. So when you started with the emotional work, right? So
Yeah.
I want
Can we
to go,
back up? Not to interrupt, but can
yeah,
we back up for 1 minute?
you're
Two of the
allowed to.
other, yeah, thank you. Two of the other things I found really beneficial. We're still human, right? Like we all, for me anyway, I love a good fajitas with some chips. But you learn along the way that, okay, if I have this, it's going to trigger this. So be prepared for the next day. Have extra water, have extra vegetables, have some good greens to offset some of those. But then intermittent fasting has been really beneficial for me. And I'm not really intense at it, but I'll tend to fast at least 12 to 16 hours a day. And that's been really helpful for me as well. So,
I fast 4 hours at a time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's about fasting for me.
Yeah.
Um, I do the fast fasting. I don't, miss a meal.
Mhm.
But but
Love it.
that's okay. It's
Yeah.
working for me today, and it doesn't mean that that won't change because it's probably a plan when I get wherever I'm going,
Yeah.
whenever that may be.
Well, I
Um,
think if it works for you, Mike, like that's the most important is again, we have to just be in tune to our bodies of what works best for us.
well, I mean, what works today doesn't work tomorrow, right? So every day's a new
Valid.
adventure, and it's all about paying attention to what is working and isn't, right? And And as I've become more spiritual, I'm more in tune to what is and what isn't. It doesn't mean I follow my own body, what it wants me to do. It just means that I know what I should do. So I'm still a rebel, right? I'm still not going to listen to myself either, but that's okay.
Right.
Baby steps.
Right.
So when you got to the point of that you started emotionally bouncing back a little bit, because with the hormones and the thyroid, it's so hard to even attempt to bounce back, right?
Right.
So when you started peeling that layer, like, did you do therapy? Did you go to a therapist? Did you like try and talk it out? Did you
Yeah.
what were the steps for you? Like, I mean, how did you start healing? Because there's so much there that, I mean, what was the steps?
Yeah, really good question. To put them in steps would be challenging. I'm a reader, and I love to learn. Some of the first things that I did is I just started reading on the brain and how the brain works and how the body works. One book I strongly recommend is The Body Keeps the Score. It speaks a lot, if you're not familiar with it, just how our cells actually retain the emotions throughout the years. And that's why we can have something really powerful that happens to us, and then something will spark it and we'll feel that feeling all over again. So that's where after reading on some of the neurology and emotion code, my first step was something called, well, first I got a coach. And she was someone who professionally I had been a contact with for a long time and who I trusted very much to be able to go down this road with. And she was amazing in the start of my journey. She did something called RAMP, which just helped the reprogramming of your childhood memories to help yourself build a more empowering story, because it really is our story to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that, I started working with someone using something called the emotion code. And really what the emotion code is it helps you release the emotions behind the cellular that stays in your cells. Did some Reiki therapy. I do a lot of writing. I'm a writer by nature. I tend to find writing's good therapy for me, and just writing things out. Probably and those years had so much impact. Probably the most pivotal has been in the last year. And I was turned on to a holistic chiropractor. Her name is Dr. Christy Matuziak. She's fantastic and amazing.
She's right there.
She's right there.
In the comments.
And holistic medicine for me is the way to go. I don't like taking medicine or pills. For me, it's not right. Hi. Oh, precious.
Can't do a live without her jumping on.
I love it. I love that she did. So yeah, just working to release the really cellular piece of the emotions, to let those go. And then working with my words and my stories and my writing to actually take the steps to change the story. And I can tell you, probably 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been as comfortable as I am right now here talking to you.
And that's a testament to the work you put in, right?
It's been a lot of work.
And here's the reality: a year ago, I wouldn't have been as comfortable being on this as I am today, right? And a year ago, it was always a pity party, right? I had no problem sharing my stories, right? I had no problem sharing how bad things were, or how horrible my circumstances were, or situations, or woe is me. But doing this work now, it's more about, this is where I was, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done to get where I'm at today, right? And I've learned that there's a lot of power in being vulnerable and sharing your truth, but there's even more power by being able to show somebody else how you got away from it and how you were able to bounce back.
Yeah. I have to mention on that, Mike, it doesn't necessarily take away the angst. I was still fearful, thinking, oh my gosh, today is coming. But there's a difference between what you feel inside, like the anxiousness, the anxiety, the, oh my gosh, I'm going to run away. Feeling isn't the same anymore. You have the power to push through differently and just show up for me, it's showing up the same outside as I am inside, which is something so many more people should feel. So,
Well, and again, your spirit shines through, right? Because you're now becoming aligned with yourself, and
yeah.
you're finding your peace, right?
Mhm.
And finding your personal freedom.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a big misconception about freedom, right? Everybody wants freedom. The reality is the only freedom that we can attain is freedom from self. And once you attain that, everything else is free.
Right.
Like there is nothing that can hold you back once you're at that point. And you have now spun this into doing these children's books, and I really
Yeah.
want to that because how you're leveraging it to help young and kids, help young, I love it, help youth and kids to be able to process differently and learn from your experience. That is a magical power, and you need to speak to Raquel about it because Raquel is doing something amazing with children. So I think you two need to connect on that.
Definitely. Thanks for that, Mike. Can I share about the books? What I'm
Yeah.
doing?
Oh, yeah. Share about all of them.
Awesome.
Bring them out. Put them on screen. I don't care.
Yeah. If I wasn't connected, I would. So, really dialing it back to my childhood years. And again, I think that we have the opportunity to teach our kids better about emotions. You know, my mom and dad were amazing and fabulous, and we didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about that stuff. It was suck it up and keep going. That's the era they grew up in. Which is okay. It made me into the strong person I am. So I love them for it. But in any case, I wanted to create something that could really teach kids from that 3 to 8 range about what feelings are so for example, book 1 is Fearfully Brave. So fear and brave. So every book I take 2 feelings and build the dichotomy of the 2 of how you can feel fearful, you can be brave at the same time, and learning each one. The storyline gives just different examples of fear and when you might feel fear, and brave and when you might show bravery. How Felix the fox can be fearful and brave, and Bart the bear can be brave and fearful, and both are okay. So it'll be a series of 12 when it's all done. And book 2 comes out this month, which we're pretty excited about.
And you keep adding more topics, so you're doing well.
Thank you.
You just and the way that you're doing it is brilliant, right? Because you're doing it in a way that no matter what age the child is, and even for adults, right? Like I mean, you know, I have the emotional maturity of a 3-year-old some days, so I'm sure I could relate on many ways. After all, 41 didn't even say I loved myself until then, so apparently I have some growing up to do emotionally. But that's okay, right? And I accept that today. But I see where those books can really, you know, help the masses, right? And then I look at it and I say, there's got to be some type of generational learning from that as well, right? So if you look at seniors, when we're allowed to be in front of people again, because obviously now it's not a good time, I see where seniors reading the books to children or children reading the books to seniors and having conversations about their life experience and what they've gone through and being able to share that generational knowledge can leverage that to a whole different educational experience for both sides. Which I just thought of on the spot, by the way. I never told Jen about this before. So hopefully she's taking notes. But you know, I think the way that you're coming across and the love and the way that you're just putting your message out there, right? And I know that we've talked about this during our conversations, is how you feel like the thyroid cancer was you not being suppressing your voice your whole life.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're never going to have that issue again. 1, because you don't have a thyroid anymore, but 2, you're obviously not suppressing your voice anymore. And it's beautiful, right? Because it's beautiful to watch because your soul is on fire, and I see your spirit coming through and your passion for what you're doing. And I really want you to go into a little bit more detail of how freeing you feel today, and a little bit about your websites, and a little bit about, I mean, I know you have your coaching, and I also know that you have your non-for-profit charity, whatever it's called. I'm not going into that, but you have your store, and you have a lot going on, and I really want you to share it. And I meant to put the link up on the screen, and I don't even know if I know how to do it. So I'm just
Well, I appreciate
pick a place and start.
I appreciate all of that. Where do I start? Guys, my mission is to really, no one should feel lonely. No one. I mean, I know logically, I always had people to go to. I always had people that I could have talked to, but I never did. And I really think that that's where we have. And Mike, I love what you're doing for, you're on a similar path. Like, we have the opportunity to let people know you're not alone in this. The showing up strong and the faking it only works for so long, because your body is going to take the toll. And unless you deal with what's going on inside, sometimes at some point, it's going to catch up in some way, shape, or form. So I really, I want to believe in people and help them believe in themselves. Because there is so much when you can just see what's good in a person and help them see what's good in themselves. That lights me up. And I do it with different ways I'm a coach, as you had mentioned. My big goal at some point is to also work more with employers and workplaces. Again, we have that opportunity to help employees and leaders to better understand each other, right? Because we're different people, and it's not good or bad, it's just different. And if we can help close that gap between personalities and understandings and communications, we can then in turn know, okay, Jen is struggling. She's got depression. She's got some shit going on. Pardon my language. Don't know if I can swear on here.
Whatever you want. We're good.
And recognize it and say, okay, I know you've been through a lot. How you doing? How can I help? How can I support you? And just having those right tools. Go ahead, Mike.
So do you find that that's a multi-layered approach? Because I feel like before a leader can have the EQ to be able to do that, they need to be able to look within themselves first. Because if they don't do the work themselves, and if they're not at an emotional point to where they understand themselves enough, then how can you even look at an employee and empathize with them or understand where they're even coming from? Right.
Well, that's why I think it takes a teaching on both sides, right? We have the opportunity to teach both sides how to understand each other, right? Because as leaders, and I've been in leadership roles since, decades. And as leaders we're put under all this pressure of all of these responsibilities that, of course, we take on and we need to accomplish. And are we doing it in a way that's empowering people and that we're still understanding one another without just pressuring people to get things done? And I think we've come a huge way in this area anyway as leaders. But I personally think that we still have room to grow from an emotional side of things.
Well, and I think,
again,
yeah, and I think again, it's a multi-layered approach, even for an individual, right? Because they need to be aligned, right? It's not only about the EQ, it's not only about the mind, it's not only about the body, it's about the spirit too. And there needs to be some type of alignment across the board within somebody. You can be the brightest star in the world, you can have the best spirit in the world, you can have the most passion in the world. But if you don't have EQ, then you're never going to get in. You're never going to be able to relate. If you have all the EQ in the world and you have the best spirit in the world and you're aligned in that way, but you don't have the mental fortitude and you don't have the mental resilience or understanding to comprehend it, then you're going to miss the mark there too.
Right.
So it's really about aligning leadership, right? And bringing aligned people into leadership, right? Because they'll be able to produce more and bring more to the table than somebody who's somebody's disqualified or somebody that has experience, even just because they'll be able to get the best out of the people around them, and then bring out the best in everyone around them, like you do, like you do. Right? Like that's just what.
People want to know that you have their back.
Hi, LinkedIn user. I don't know who you are, but hi.
You know,
Yeah.
they just, people need cheerleaders. And I've been in the staffing world for 15 years. And I can tell you inevitably in the hundreds of thousands of conversations that I've had, people sell themselves short, and we have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, back up here for a minute. Let's really dial into what you've actually done. But not only that, especially there's just, we've not always done well about coaching people when they've not always had the right skill sets or when they haven't had the right tools, and just giving them the right feedback so that they can actually excel and grow. So again,
So
it's
Jen,
another area of opportunity for us.
so Jen, I'm
So
going to pause you again because
Mhm.
this is Charisse Fonts. It's
Hi,
her
Sharice.
birthday today, so everybody wish her happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Charisse. Thanks for
I,
being on today.
I introduced you to her, and she's the one that did Humanity to Manatee, and she believed in working with companies to help them raise the vibration of their employees. So that's another connection that you have to make immediately.
Got it.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Charisse.
Mike.
But thanks for showing up, though, Charisse. I love you. She's gonna be on Monday with me, actually. So, it's so much about everybody saying happy birthday. It's so much about being present, right?
Mhm. It
And
is.
and it comes back to doing that work for yourself, right? Because you can't be present for anyone else if you don't do it for yourself.
Right.
And it is not the easiest journey. It's just not. It is painful. It is torturous. It is heart-wrenching. But at the
Yes.
same time, the reward and the self-reward and the growth and the self-confidence, the self-awareness, what comes from it is so magical. Because the minute you start seeing your own spark,
Yeah.
the world can start seeing it too, right?
Yeah.
And that is the power in this. And that's why I'm continuing this, and that's why I'm going to keep pushing this, and that's why I want these conversations, because people need to see that if they do the work and they go through the pain, you have to go through it. You can't go around it.
No.
I mean, I don't know about you, but when you were through your ups and downs your whole life, my ups and downs, I just kept going around the pain.
Yeah.
Like I refused to go through it. I
Yeah.
didn't, right? I hid behind so many different addictions, so many different void fillers. Even a marriage that was never meant to be, just to hide from it.
Yeah.
And it was so painful and torturous.
Yeah. I avoided the feelings, and I kept showing up strong and pretending like all was good. All was good. All wasn't good.
No.
Yeah. But again, it's become all too common, right? Because I think that depending on what we've learned, and again, I grew up grateful for how I grew up, but it was suck it up and just keep going. So I sucked it up and just kept going. And that's where, again, we have the opportunity to just help people to open up and just say, I'm struggling. Here's what I need, and here's how I can help.
So here's a question, right? With your children, do you find yourself overcompensating to the other end now, to where you want them to overexpress their emotions because you don't want to let them keep them in either? Because I do that, right? Like I actually ask them to identify what they're feeling. I ask them to go into detail about describing it from their point of view, right? Their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good topic, Mike. So my son is all grown up and married and flown the coop
Oh, so
already.
he doesn't count. All right.
But he does, in the fact that for me, I did some backing up because he saw some very personally self-destructive behavior of what I did to me. And in the biggest thing that I've learned is the more that I heal, the more that I see him grow inadvertently. And the more that he sees me loving me and not looking in the mirror and calling myself some not good names. It's just true. The more that he sees me loving myself and me doing the work, the more that he naturally just is lifting. And I think that especially with Bo being his age now, like I can drop nuggets, but I mean, he's 21 years old. So
He's got to make his decisions
he's got
now.
to make his own
Right.
decisions now. Yeah.
Well, like my situation is different, right? My kids are younger.
Right.
Obviously, I didn't have them as young. So which is probably a benefit because they probably wouldn't even know who I was if I did. But it's like you said, as I'm healing myself, I see them heal, right? And as I'm doing things, like when I meditate, sometimes my son looks at me and says, "I want to do that with you," right? Like they're curious and they want to do, they want to know, they want to experience, they want to be better.
Yep.
They learn, right, from healthier environments, and I don't blame my parents, right, because it's how they were raised, and they were raised to be emotionally stifled, right, and that's what society bred them to do, and that's what the stigmas were, and all those other things. And then here comes me, this overly sensitive little white little male, and it was like game's on, right? Like I'm crying every. I'm I'm an empath, right? Which I talk about all the time. I'm empathetic, and I or empathic, sorry. And I, like I'm starting to feel other people's emotions. I'm starting to and it just nobody understood, right? Like it was so strange for me, and it wasn't their fault because they didn't know, right?
Right.
It wasn't talked about.
Right.
Now we have Google, so you don't even have to look anymore. You just say, "Hey Siri" or "Hey Google," and it just does it for you.
Right.
My daughter just wants to play Barbies out here, so I have no choice. But yeah, the masks are so difficult. The masks are so hard.
Right.
I hid behind so many of them, and I mean, I showered in the dark most of my life because I didn't want to look at anything, right? Because I just didn't. So I mean, that's just how I was, right? Like I just wasn't happy. So if you looked at one thing that you do today that is so different and so powerful, what is the most impactful thing that you do on a daily basis that inspires everything else you do for the day?
Just one thing?
I just want to know what the one thing is, that one thing that ignites your flame to get you started to do everything else that you do for the day.
It may sound trivial, but to me it isn't. And it for me it's in two. The number one thing that I literally do every single morning when I get out of bed is I remind myself of what I'm grateful for. And then the second thing is as soon as I walk in my bathroom mirror, I look myself in the mirror and I tell myself how much I love myself. And
So,
just those, go ahead.
So it's the gratitudes and the affirmations.
Absolutely.
See, for me, it's got to be meditate, then then gratitudes, then affirmations.
Yeah.
Or no, I meditate, affirmations, then gratitude, because I can't do gratitude until I get my head clear first. Because I'm like this crazy, lucid, vivid dreamer. So if I start doing gratitude, it's like, I'm glad I'm not still sleeping. Like, that's my grateful, I'm grateful that that's over.
Yeah.
So I've got to get my mind clear first so I can actually really identify, what I'm grateful for and where I'm at today and where I was, right? And even where I was yesterday, right? Because every day is that step forward.
Right.
So do you have a routine that you follow? Do you have a schedule that you follow? Or do you just wing it and just follow what your body says and just go with it?
I have a pretty regimented schedule. Again, when I wake up, for me, it's just the natural gratitude and it sets my day. But I've really learned, again, with the thyroid has taught me a lot of mostly it shifts how my workouts go. I'm typically an early morning. I'm up by 4:30 in the morning and I'm doing an early workout in the morning. And it's always a workout, but the workout might change based on how I'm feeling. I always do some type of writing in the morning. Usually it's shorter. My evenings are usually my brain dump. So end of the day, I'm doing a brain dump. Anything that happened throughout the day, it's coming off so that I can sleep with a healthy heart. Yeah. Meditating, I'm not consistent daily meditator, but I will take multiple times throughout the day and just get myself calm and centered.
Yeah, I mean, I do a big meditation in the morning. I listen to meditation music for either somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes. And then I meditate, I pray, I write my gratitude somewhere in that time period, and then I also read affirmations also, because I just like the way that the music clears my mind, right?
Yeah.
And talked about this, I listen to different frequencies depending on what my intuition wants me to follow that day. So I just have this playlist of like 50 of them that I just pick for the day. Uh,
Nice.
and, and and they all have different frequencies, they all have different purposes, and I listen to what my body wants, my soul wants, right?
Right.
And I'm in tune to it, and I'm beyond regimented, right? Like I have a color coded calendar. Like I literally have wake up and gratitudes, do meditate, um, read, write. I have exercise. Like it's all color coded. Like it's ridiculous. Like I'm a little nuts when it comes to that. But
But it works for you and
it
it's
it
effective
does
for you.
it
So,
does right. It keeps me honest to what I want to accomplish,
yeah.
and it gives me a purpose, right? And I'm not big on writing out to-do lists. I'm not big on those things. Like those things, they don't serve a purpose for me. But when I go through my calendar and I see as the day goes by, I'm not missing things, I feel very accomplished.
Yeah.
At least, well, satisfied, I should say. Um, today I know waking up is an accomplishment because there's so many people that don't.
Right.
So there's just so many pieces to the puzzle, right? And I think it's important that people understand how many layers there are to this whole big pie,
Yeah.
because you don't just wake up one day and you're just fixed, right? Like
No.
this is not right. So
Oh, no.
talk about your coaching a little bit, because I want you
Yeah.
to go into detail about that also.
Yeah. And we should back up for a minute to a couple of things that
Sure.
you said. I think it is important to mention that it looks different for everybody. What works for me and what works for you and works for anybody else, it could look different. And one of the things that I tell all of everybody who knows me is try some things, stick with something, give it a good 21, 30 days and see if it's working for you. And if it's not, switch it, because gratitude might be better for you in the morning or the afternoon or working out or whatever. So try different things. And then the other thing I wanted to make mention of, it escaped me, so it'll come back. So coaching, I'm a believer of people. I want to be the ally for twofold. Number one, believe in people and hold them accountable, but then also flip it so they can start helping believe in themselves. And of course, a big aspect of that is mindset. But for me, even bigger than that, I like focusing on the actuals. What are your triggers? What really gets you going? Then that to get to the root of the problem, so we can actually fix it from the root. I like building the right habits with my clients so that we can get the right habits in place. Find out what's empowering them, what's disempowering them. Get the right structure that way. My biggest focus is on confidence, accountability, and body image.
And knowing you, that makes sense,
Yeah.
because that it's just a perfect fit for you, right? Because you've been through the trials and tribulations, you understand, what others can go through, and you empathize with it, right? You feel their pain with them, and because of that, and because you know how you got out of it, you're able to relate and show them steps that work for you, and then
Right.
also, like you said, help them find ways that work for them.
Right.
And coaching, I have a very interesting perception on coaching, but I'm going to leave that one alone because I'm not trying to insult anybody. But I think what I noticed that you do with people, different than most people that I've ever met in this world, is you help people you inspire people to be self-inspired.
Mhm.
You help them be self-inspired, and that's power, right? Because once you're self-inspired, nobody can take that from you.
Yeah.
And you're not looking for a coaching client for 3 years, six
Mhm.
years, right? You're not looking for that repeat business. You're looking to help them move along their way, right?
I
And
want people to believe in themselves.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you
it,
for
it's
that, Mike. Yeah.
it's beautiful, right?
Mhm.
And you get this self gratification for watching these people transform in front of you,
Yeah.
and it's the most beautiful experience ever, right? So what's your next step? Like, what are you looking to do next? Well, no, wait, I want to take a step back.
Okay.
I want to talk about your shop, and I want to talk your e-commerce shop, and then I want to talk about what you do with that. Your
Well,
charity, your spin-off, your whatever
yeah.
that is. I definitely want to talk about that because every single human being should know about that.
Yeah. So
It should replace Amazon.
thank you for that. Hang on. I'm going to grab one. Hang on. I knew I should have grabbed everything before and I didn't think to have one put together, but this is my Happy Mail. So at the start of my journey, and this was actually my starting point when I decided there were so many things I had on my heart, and that hesitation held me back. And this was the first one. And I mentioned loneliness earlier, and I really, guys, over 60% of people in America are lonely. That just shouldn't happen. We have the opportunity to close the gap. So I
And
started
what's
Jen's.
real quick? What's the website? What's the website?
Yeah, it's jenshappymail.com.
See if I get this right. We're gonna see
Yeah.
how this works for me.
Yeah,
I've never done this before, so just keep going. I'm
all
good.
good. So I started Jen's Happy Mail to have a platform so people could just send someone something to say, I'm here, I care, I got your back. But I also wanted to make it useful. And for
Did I spell that right? Just
Jen's happymail.com. Yes. Thank you.
okay.
Thanks,
Woohoo!
Mike.
Win.
Yeah. But I also wanted to have the opportunity to give them tools that would help them, because not everyone feels that they want a coach or they want support, and they may just need other things. So I tried curating just different gratitude books and tools and other resources that I've found helpful in my journey to put within the packages. Um, my goal ultimately with the Happy Mail is to get it across all platforms and even in employment situations, so that again we can have people really have a platform to say, I got your back, I care, I'm watching. But then also part of what I built with it is my monthly mission, and anyone can nominate another person, and twice a month I choose two people, if I have enough nominations, to get free packages that they get anonymously.
And that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's magic. That's what we call Jen's magic.
Yeah.
That's truly just lifting others up for no other reason than you can, right?
Yeah.
And just sharing your heart and your soul and who you are with somebody.
Yeah.
And right now that is needed, and more people need to know about this and see it because it's beautiful. I mean, it just is. And I'm very honored to know you and share the screen with you because I think it's that powerful.
Thank you for that, Mike. Thank you.
So what's your next steps? What is something that you want to do next that's going to take you to the next step of whatever you're looking to accomplish?
Of course, there's so much I'm working on this year.
No, just list it off. We're good.
Yeah, definitely my biggest is getting the whole children's series out, getting some additional children's books out on that platform, um, being more present with different speaking events. I'd like to create some different workshops surrounding my topics. Um, I don't know if it'll be this year, but certainly in the years to come, I want to see retreats or some type of workshops for the teenager, adolescent, young adult. Again, that's where they're so placid at that age. And they're old enough that they can actually take ideas, but they're not too old that we still have time to hit them before they get major anxiety or depression or really build on some negative stories. On my agenda is to get some type of podcast, and I'm not sure if that's going to hit this year, but we'll see.
It will.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
will. I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know it will.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll
It's not going
happen.
to take as long as you think.
Yeah.
So I as far as in-person stuff, I'm pretty sure that might not be this year. But obviously, you can do it virtually.
Right.
And I'm sure with some of the topics you're getting to, you could probably work with school boards, and you could probably get into schools through their virtual education platforms. Not that they work well, but you can still get into it. And I think that it's limitless, right? Where you're going and where you're heading is truly to inspire others to be inspired. And you're empowering others to be empowered for themselves, and you're creating this ripple effect, right? And this ripple effect has the opportunity to change everyone, right? Because everyone that everyone touches is just going to turn into this enormous, just Jen's world, basically. So we're going to turn into Jen's world, hopefully.
Right.
Maybe if we're lucky before the end of 2021, because we need it. But there's so much to be said, right? This conversation has been pure. This conversation not rehearsed at all. I don't believe in rehearsing. I don't believe in preparing at all, actually. Like I was still trying to get Sid in her room like right before this went live, so which obviously I failed, but that's okay.
I do have to mention her popping in on the screen. That was like highlight of the whole night.
She does it almost every time I'm live. Like she's my mascot. Like that's it. Like she's just this little happy little mascot, jumped on my lap, laid down, and then ran off somewhere. But no, look, I loved having you. I will have you again on the show, and I'm just so happy that you were willing to do this, because I know that this was tough for you to be willing. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I appreciate all of what you're doing for all of us, and yeah, keep going, because you have amazing things coming too. So,
Well, you have any last minute comments before we run out of time, or?
No, but thanks for everyone for being here, and yeah, connect with me on all of Mike. Do we have any of my social, or maybe I'll list them out in comments so they know how to
There
get
you
hold
go.
of me.
That
Okay.
sounds better. I have to zip a purse.
All good.
It's not working. My teeth aren't working either.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. You need two hands. I understand.
And wouldn't be me if I wouldn't say it, guys. Always be kind to you, and just know it's one day at a time. And when you have a bad day, it's just a bad day. It's just not. Just move forward. So.
And bad days don't have to be bad weeks, and bad moments don't have to be bad days, right? That's where self-acceptance and self-compassion come in, and that's where doing the work will really transform your momentary life.
Right.
Because especially in this ever-changing world, every moment shifts where you're at. This is why she needs to be sleeping. This is crazy. You're 3 years old. Stop running my life. Seriously. I'm still live, by the way, in case you were wondering. You're not concerned. All right, guys. Have a great night, and I will try to get Sid to sleep, apparently.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. Hang on. Stay in there, Jen.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.